He was a lawyer who knew the law better than anyone, but one traffic stop nearly turned him into another headline. Surrounded by police dragged from his own car, he realized rights mean nothing when power is abused. Then the crowd stepped in and everything changed. He was a successful lawyer, dressed sharp, driving home after a long day in court. He had broken no law, made no mistake, and had nothing to hide. But the moment flashing lights appeared behind him, everything changed. Within minutes, the man who defended others for a living was being treated like a threat in his own car. Yet before he opened that door, he said 6 words that stopped everything cold. What were those words, and why did they terrify the officers? Marcus Reed had spent his life believing the law could protect people when the world refused to. He was respected in courtrooms across the city, known for staying calm under pressure and helping families who felt powerless. Every morning began the same way: early coffee, case files on the passenger seat, long hours fighting for clients who had nowhere else to turn. By night, he was simply a man trying to get home to his family after another exhausting day. That evening felt ordinary. The sun had dropped low behind the buildings, casting orange light across the streets as Marcus drove through familiar roads. His tie was loosened, his mind already shifting away from legal arguments and toward dinner waiting at home. The radio played softly, traffic was light, nothing seemed unusual. But Marcus knew something many people never had to think about. For some drivers, a routine trip home could become dangerous in seconds. It wasn't paranoia, it was experience. Years of defending people who had been stopped, searched, humiliated, or worse had taught him one painful truth. Sometimes the most normal moments carried the greatest risk. So when red and blue lights suddenly flashed in his mirror, Marcus didn't panic. He didn't reach for his wallet. He didn't step out. His hands tightened on the wheel as his heartbeat slowed instead of raced, because he had prepared for this moment long before it ever happened. And what he was about to do would expose far more than a traffic stop. Marcus lowered his window only an inch, enough to be heard, not enough to surrender control of the moment. The patrol car doors opened, and 2 officers stepped out with the kind of urgency usually reserved for danger. Hands near their belts, eyes locked on him, their pace was quick, sharp, aggressive. The street was nearly empty, but porch lights flickered on nearby. Curtains shifted. People were watching. Marcus kept both hands high on the steering wheel where they could be seen. He knew every movement mattered now. A glance, a reach, a breath taken at the wrong time could be twisted into something else. One officer moved to the driver's side. The other circled behind the car, studying the back seat, the trunk, the plates, as if expecting to find proof of guilt hidden somewhere. Marcus had seen this pattern before. He had defended clients who described this exact choreography. One distracts, one searches, both assume. Then Marcus spoke, calmly, clearly, carefully. He said he would comply with lawful instructions. He said he would not exit the vehicle without being told the legal reason for the stop. He said he was recording the interaction and wanted everything documented. The energy changed instantly. The first officer stiffened. His confidence cracked for half a second. This was no frightened driver apologizing for nothing. This was someone who knew procedure, knew rights, knew how quickly stories could fall apart under evidence. But instead of backing down, the pressure increased. A flashlight beam cut through the car, sweeping across Marcus's face, his lap, the center console. The officer asked where he was coming from, where he was going, whether the vehicle belonged to him, why he seemed nervous. Marcus answered only what he was required to answer, nothing more. That refusal to perform comfort seemed to anger them most. The second officer claimed Marcus matched the description of someone suspicious in the area. No name, no details, no actual accusation. Just the vague language that had trapped so many people before him. Marcus felt the old anger rise in his chest, not fear, recognition. He had represented teachers, veterans, students, fathers, mothers, all reduced in seconds to a description. Suspicious, non-compliant, threatening, words broad enough to fit anyone they chose. Cars began slowing as they passed. A neighbor across the street stepped onto a porch with a phone raised. Another light came on upstairs. Witnesses were multiplying, the officers noticed. Their voices grew louder, orders became sharper. One demanded Marcus step out immediately, the other tugged at the handle, finding the door still locked. Marcus did not argue, he did not shout. He simply asked one question: what is the lawful basis for this order? For a moment no one spoke. The silence hit harder than yelling. Because now everyone watching could see it, the officers had expected obedience, not accountability. Then one reached for the radio, eyes narrowed, and called for backup. And Marcus knew the next few minutes could decide everything. The sound of sirens grew louder as backup units turned onto the block. Red and blue lights flooded the street, reflecting off windows, pavement, and Marcus's windshield until the whole neighborhood looked like a crime scene. 3 more officers arrived. Now 5 stood around one parked car. Commands came from different directions at once. Unlock the door, step out now, keep your hands visible, turn off the engine. The chaos felt deliberate, too many voices, too much pressure, too fast. One wrong reaction could be framed as resistance. Marcus's heart pounded, but his face remained still. He kept his hands on the wheel and repeated that he would comply with lawful orders once they were clearly stated. Nothing more. Then it happened. An officer struck the window with a baton. The crack exploded across the glass like lightning. Gasps rose from the crowd, phones lifted higher. A child somewhere nearby began crying. Marcus flinched as shards scattered across the dashboard. Another strike came harder. The door was yanked open. Hands grabbed his arm, his jacket, his shoulder. His body was pulled halfway out of the seat as officers shouted over each other. For a second, Marcus felt weightless, caught between the safety of the car and the violence outside it. He had defended people who described this exact moment: the helplessness, the confusion. The terror of being treated as dangerous while doing nothing dangerous at all. Then through the noise, one voice cut across everything. A woman from the crowd stepped forward holding her phone high, shouting Marcus's full name and title. Others joined in. Neighbors yelled that he was a lawyer. More cameras appeared. Windows opened. People started streaming onto lawns and sidewalks. The officers froze. Because in an instant, Marcus was no longer alone in a darkened car. He was now a witness they could not control. The grip on Marcus's arms loosened first. Then the shouting stopped. Officers stepped back one by one, suddenly aware of the dozens of cameras pointed at them. The same crowd that had watched in fear was now recording in silence. Every broken piece of glass, every command, every hand placed on a man who had done nothing wrong was now evidence. Within minutes, the tone changed completely. A supervisor arrived, voices dropped, officers moved aside, someone mentioned a misunderstanding. Another claimed procedure had been followed. But the shattered window, the torn jacket, and the trembling hands Marcus tried to hide told a different story. He was released without a ticket, without charges, without explanation. Marcus drove home with cold air rushing through the broken glass beside him. His hands still shook on the steering wheel, not because he was weak. Because he understood how close he had come to becoming another headline, another name people debated for a week before forgetting. The next morning, he did what he had spent years helping others do. He documented everything. The footage spread fast. News stations replayed the scene. Legal groups demanded answers. Some people were outraged. Others asked what he must have done to deserve it. And that question revealed the deepest wound of all: how quickly innocence is doubted when the victim looks a certain way. Marcus returned to court days later, standing before judges and juries as if nothing had happened. But everything had changed. He no longer saw traffic stops as isolated incidents buried in case files. He had felt the fear himself, the confusion. The humiliation of knowing rights on paper do not always survive contact with power. This was never just about one lawyer on one street. It was about how easily respect can disappear, how quickly assumptions can turn violent, and how many people never get cameras, witnesses, or a second chance. So ask yourself, if the crowd had stayed inside, would Marcus have made it home at all?